This is the first video of a series of videos where I will be going over different hot button issues facing our nation at this point and giving my opinions on these issues. The purpose behind these videos is to give you a solid grasp on who I am as a person, my beliefs, my values, and hopefully you enjoy what you hear and stick around for some more. If there is a particular topic you want me to discuss down the line, feel free to leave it in the comments below and I will be sure to get to it relatively soon. This is a very small channel at this point, so it is basically impossible for me to miss your comment, and it is very likely that I'll be able to make whatever video you request. So keep that in mind as you view the rest of this video. Racism. What a fun topic to choose as the first video of this channel. So why on earth did I pick this? Well, I promise you, it's not just because this is a hot button issue that everyone has been talking about for the past few months. I promise. Granted, that does help. Hopefully that brings in a few views. Hopefully that interests a few people to check this channel out. But it is not the only reason, or even the biggest reason. The reason why I wanted to discuss racism is because I care a lot about people, and racism is one of those things that harms millions of people in this nation. I am white, and because I am white, I recognize that I have privileges that other ethnic groups and minorities do not have. And I realize that I benefit from racism whether or not I like that fact, and I don't like that fact. I care about people, and in my mind, I want equality for all people regardless of race. If you saw my introductory video, I basically went over how I want everybody to live a happy life, and racism is an affront to that ideal. Racism makes life unnecessarily difficult for so many people in this country, which is why I care about it so much. I hate racism because I think that having your life so negatively affected by something as arbitrary as your race is evil, and I hope that one day we are able to get past this. But unfortunately, as much as a lot of people in this country think otherwise, we are not. Racism is still alive and well, and something as arbitrary as race really shouldn't affect people as much as it does. And I do believe race is mostly arbitrary. I'm a zoologist, so a lot of the way I view the world comes from the lens of where we fit in nature to a large extent, and compared to like other animals, compared to other species out there, humans are not genetically diverse at all. We are extremely similar to each other, and the reason why I bring this up is because I think people like to view different races of humans as being fundamentally different groups of people. White people can see black people and think that they're a fundamentally different type of person than they are, when really we aren't. The difference between a black person and a white person is extremely superficial, extremely. Even more extinct, just extinct period, groups of humans, human species, were more genetically diverse than we are today, Homo sapiens. In fact, there is a YouTuber named Aaron Raw that I absolutely love his content. He talks a lot about evolution and phylogeny and taxonomy and stuff like that. And so I'm going to play a little clip because I think he can explain it better than I could. So here's a little clip of Aaron Raw going over why humanity is not very genetically diverse. Our concept of race is a social construct and just borderline non-existent. So I'm going to place that here.
I'll do this one more episode to compare the human races that once existed with the one race that remains. If you thought there was more than one race now, it's because the use of the word race has significantly changed over the last couple hundred years. The way that word is most commonly used today more accurately refers to ethnicity, or to demes, which can also be ethnic. A deme is an isolated population within the larger gene pool. They exist everywhere, or they did until recently, but they're neither as isolated nor as distinct as some make them out to be. Often race actually refers to clines. A cline is a geographical gradient where particular traits in a single species look different in other geographic areas. These characteristics can be phenotypic, like hair color, skin pigmentation, stature, and other observable external biological traits, or they can be genotypic, like having ABO blood type or the sickle cell hemoglobin. All the differences between modern humans are merely clinal, not actually racial.
Link to the video in the description if you want to watch it for yourself. But getting back to what I was talking about, my point in bringing this up is that we are very similar in terms of races, to the point where race doesn't even technically exist among modern man. It did among our ancestors, Homo erectus. If you watch the video, he does go over Homo erectus and how Homo erectus actually did have multiple races throughout 3 continents, spanning hundreds of thousands of miles, where these different races were so isolated from each other that despite being the same species, they had fundamentally different distinctive traits that separated the different races of Homo erectus from each other. One race could have the average height of an adult be 5 foot tall, while another race of Homo erectus had juveniles that were 7 feet tall. That's how diverse they were. And yes, humans do have some degree of height differences, but here's another fundamental difference. Homo erectus had different races with fundamentally different structured brains that caused them to have different levels of intelligence versus humans today. We do not have that. As much as certain racists and race realists might want you to believe, we don't have that in our modern man. We do not have it where different races of modern humans have different structured brains. Sorry, we just don't. We are fundamentally the same species, the same race, biologically speaking, from each other. Race is a social construct. Now, don't misconstrue what I'm trying to say here. My point in bringing up the fact that race is a social construct is fundamentally to point out that the human race, we are basically the same thing. We are genetically, biologically, we are the human race. And logically speaking, there is no reason to see any race of people differently from the other. There's no reason to see black people or white people or Asian people, etc., as different groups of people. With that said, we don't live just within the realm of biology. We live in the realm of society. And because of the social construction of race, this has led to many forms of racism that has developed over the decades. America has white supremacy in its DNA. I don't think people realize just how much slavery really affected this country as much as it has. Keep in mind, slavery was a 200 plus year old thing. Slavery was so much longer than I think a lot of people recognize, and segregation was decades afterwards. Segregation didn't last as long as American slavery, but it was still a freaking long time. The era we live now, a post-slavery, post-segregation world, not post-racism, mind you, but just post-segregation and slavery, this is a relatively new era that we live in. And because of that, I think there is a lot of work to be done to reach equality that we still have to do. And I think that in ignoring race, ignoring racism, and pretending that racism, that this evil in society is less than it is, I think that does a disservice to the minorities in this country by basically telling them that their struggles is non-existent. We still have a long ways to go. While this era is still new, relatively speaking, compared to the rest of American history, it is an era where we can build on top of it, and hopefully we can go to a new age where maybe racism ends. Hopefully, I don't know if that'll ever happen in my lifetime. Like I said, racism has existed for America's entire history, which is hundreds of years. I'm not sure if I'll ever see racism end in my lifetime. But what would a post-racism world look like? In my head, in my mind, my goal would ultimately be to live in a post-race society. I used to have the mindset of racial blindness, where you basically see people as people regardless of their race. And I held that mentality, I held that lens to the world for a long time. But the issue with racial blindness as it exists today is you don't see the racism in this world. And I think that is a detriment to fighting racism. You need to see race in order to see racism, and you need to see racism in order to combat it. But I think the reason why racial blindness appealed to me so much is because I do fundamentally want to see people as people first rather than their race. I don't want to see black people and white people and Asian people. I just want to see people. Just like I don't see brunettes or redheads or blondes. I just see people with hair. That's fundamentally the attraction for me to racial blindness. But again, the issue why I don't see race that way anymore is simply because racial blindness misses the mark on racism. And a lot of people of different races are proud of their race, and for good reason. Like, if you're black in this country and you're proud of being black, what you're probably proud of is living your life despite the racism you face, and you're proud of your ancestors for making it through those tough times. I say tough times like that's a very understatement, but you get what I'm saying. You understand what I'm trying to say here. I think in the future, my goal with racism would ultimately be to live in a post-race society. I truly think that as it stands right now, I think that the only way to really live in a society with no racism is to live in a post-race society, and I don't think I'll ever see that in my lifetime. But I think that's something that I would love to see or love to happen sometime in the future. I don't know if you guys would agree with that or not. I don't know if you guys would it's kind of like gender abolitionism. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that at all. Gender abolitionism is basically like the deconstruction of gender, the social construct of gender, simply because that would eliminate things like gender dysphoria in trans people, or at least alleviate it, since trans people would be able to live however they want regardless of their gender identity, or people would be able to live however they want regardless of gender identity. It's the same concept in my head for race. Racial abolition would allow people to live a happy life regardless of their race, because we wouldn't really see race anymore. I don't necessarily know if I've never talked to a person of color about this before, so I don't know how they feel. So if you are a person of color, leave a comment below. Tell me how you view that concept of one day living in a post-racial world. Because, I don't know, maybe some of you are very proud of your race and you don't want the social construction of race to go away, and I kind of understand that. I see where you're coming from, but like, I don't know. I'm just curious. I'm curious what you guys say. I'm curious what your thoughts are. So if you are a person of color, let me know in the comments below. How do you feel about one day living in a post-race society? If that's not the goal that you would want, what is your goal? Would it just simply be a post-racism society where race exists? It's just you're not discriminated against or have a harder time in life because of it? I would really love to know your guys' thoughts in the comments below. On the topic of fighting racism, I wanted to talk about Black Lives Matter. In case it wasn't obvious, I am pro Black Lives Matter, and at this point, I think if you are anti-racist, you should also be pro Black Lives Matter. I don't think it is a debate. Black Lives Matter. They just do. To say all lives matter in a vacuum, to say all lives matter, that's not racist, because all lives do matter. But the thing is, Black Lives Matter isn't saying your life doesn't matter if you're not black. It's not saying that. It's simply saying Black Lives Matter. And to say all lives matter is a response to Black Lives Matter. And when you respond to Black Lives Matter with all lives matter, what you're telling black people is that their struggles in this country, the racism they deal with, it is unimportant to you. You don't care about them. That's what you're saying, whether you realize it or not. At some point, a while ago, I used to I used to just like ignore when people said all lives matter because I wanted to believe that they were coming from a good place. I wanted to believe they had good intentions behind those words. But at this point, after George Floyd, after Breonna Taylor, after Jacob Blake, I think it's unacceptable to say all lives matter. I do think you are racist at this point if you're still going around saying all lives matter. It's been explained to you over and over and over again probably that all lives matter, or Black Lives Matter rather, doesn't equal only Black Lives Matter. It's just saying Black Lives Matter. And to say otherwise, I think, is racist, and you've been explained why. At this point, you've probably been explained. If you haven't, feel free to comment below, and I'll explain it to you. I'm more than happy to do that, but I feel like at this point, everyone has already had the whole song and dance sung to them, and at this point, I do think it's unacceptable to say all lives matter. There's a lot of people out there who don't like Black Lives Matter, and I wanted to address those people directly. A lot of people who are against Black Lives Matter, they say they are against the looting and rioting. They don't like the riots, and I feel like they have fundamentally missed the mark on this. I feel like riots, nobody is necessarily pro-riots, but riots serve a purpose. Whenever civil rights needed to be advanced, it was done primarily through riots, such as the Stonewall riots that gave LGBT people the right to marry and stuff like that. Riots, as Martin Luther King once said, are the voice of the unheard. Most of the time, when you are a minority group oppressed by the government don't care about you. They don't give a shit, and they are going to ignore you. Riots are basically the only ways to really get their attention and make change, because otherwise they can just simply ignore you. They can ignore a peaceful protest. They can't ignore a riot. And keep in mind, these riots started out as peaceful protests. They started as peaceful protests, and then they were attacked by rubber bullets and tear gas by the state. And so, quite frankly, I think it's kind of fucked up to oppress these group of people for so long and then blame them when they act out against the oppression. Quite frankly, I don't know if I'd say I am pro-riots necessarily, but I see where they're coming from. I think they are a necessary evil. And I do hope that change is going to come with the riots from Black Lives Matter, because I want there to be change in this country, and quite often change doesn't come by simply asking pretty please and hoping that change comes. And also, like, keep in mind, these same people, when Colin Kaepernick kneeled during the national anthem, these are the same people who criticize him for peacefully protesting. So I feel like these people just simply are against, to some level, black people protesting their racism. Because you protest a black person kneeling for the national anthem, that's a peaceful protest, and you were against that. And now black people and other races of people are rioting in the streets for their civil rights, for equality, and you're against that too. I honestly think you're just against people protesting racism. And I find that to be incredibly racist. And I know that people can easily hide behind, I don't like riots. Riots are never good. It's never good to destroy public property. But you have to understand, we caused this as a nation. We caused this. It's the systemic racism that led to this. And if you really want these riots to be over, if you don't want riots, you need to address these forms of racism that black people have been dealing with. To address the riots, to fight against the riots without fighting racism is racist. And by the way, keep in mind, these are the same people who are like voting for Donald Trump, because I've heard it been said so many times the past couple months that certain people are voting for Trump because the Democrats are pro-rioting and I'm against the riots, so I don't want to vote a Democrat in because I don't want riots. And it's like, that is a fundamental misunderstanding of why these people are rioting in the first place. These people are rioting because of the systemic racism they are facing. And Donald Trump, luckily Donald Trump lost the election, but Donald Trump, if he would have been reelected, would have just excited more white supremacy in this nation, just like he did during his 4 years in office. So to make this kind of allegorical, if the riots are a fire and racism is the gasoline, you're basically telling me you are voting for more gasoline to be thrown on the fire because you're against the fire. That doesn't make any fucking sense to me. So in order to have these riots go away and never face them again, you need to actually deal with the racism in this country and find some solutions to them. I think it is, again, I'm repeating myself here, but it is racist to fight these riots without fighting the racism that caused the riots. You want the riots to end the racism, or at least fight against the racism. Another thing I've heard people who don't like Black Lives Matter use as an excuse to hate on the movement is the fact that it is apparently a Marxist movement or something like that, which I find to be a really bizarre criticism personally. The criticism comes from the idea that the founders of Black Lives Matter are self-proclaimed socialists. And personally, I am not fully convinced that socialism is a bad thing. I'm still kind of learning about socialism personally, trying to get my own opinion on it. But even if we accept the premise that socialism is evil, which again, I don't accept yet, but even if we do accept that, that is irrelevant. When people say Black Lives Matter, they aren't necessarily saying that they want socialism in this country. Maybe some people are, because I've heard some people describe capitalism as racist and describe it as racist and explained why we need socialism if we are to fight racism. I don't know the full extent of that argument or not. I don't know the merits behind it, so I'm not going to say whether I agree with that or not. But what I will say is that it is completely irrelevant for us to bring up socialism when discussing the lives of black people, because Black Lives Matter, and if you're going to use socialism as an excuse to hate on the movement, I think you're just using it as an excuse to hate black people personally, and I find that to be very racist. In fact, these same people, like, you know how everybody loves Martin Luther King Jr.? Martin Luther King Jr. himself was a socialist. In fact, I have this quote here. I literally Googled Martin Luther King Jr. socialism, and I found this quote. You could probably easily find it yourself. But the quote goes, "Something is wrong with the economic system of our nation. Something is wrong with capitalism. Maybe America must move towards a democratic socialism. We must develop programs that will drive the nation to the realization of the need for a guaranteed annual income." That was Martin Luther King's words. He was a socialist. And I know so many people out there who will quote Martin Luther King Jr. and then turn around and condemn Black Lives Matter for being a Marxist organization. I'm sorry, you're a hypocrite. Fuck you. I wanted to conclude this video by saying this. As I said at the beginning of this video, I'm white, and I recognize that I have privilege that others don't. Regardless of my privilege, regardless of how much I benefit from racism, I still want to see a future of racial equality. My biggest frustration, my biggest challenge with this is sometimes I wonder if there is something about racism I can be doing that I'm not doing. Is there something I can do to fight racism and I'm not doing that something because I'm not even aware of it? That has always been my biggest challenge personally. I wish there was something more I can do. I'm just one person. I have very limited power in this world. I wish I can do more to help people, but unfortunately I can't. That is partially why I'm making this YouTube channel, because I want to be able to discuss these topics, discuss these ideas, and fight against racism that way. Now, I'm not saying every white person needs to make their own YouTube channel. I'm not saying that. I'm sure there's plenty of ways you can do to help fight racism if you're white yourself and you care about these goals. I'm just saying that because I care so much about these topics, about these issues, this is why this YouTube channel is largely a thing. This is why this is the first video on this channel. And because of that, I hope that you guys can join me in this and help me fight against racism to the best of our abilities. And with that, I do want to say that if I ever say something racist, I guarantee it's unintentional. But if I ever do say something racist, please let me know. Please call it out. I do want to be aware of that so I can learn in the future. I'm always looking to learn and improve. And I think everybody should. I think I don't remember where I heard this. It's not, this wasn't an original quote or anything, well, original idea on my part. I heard this somewhere, I just can't remember where. But I heard this quote one time, I think it was a tweet that said something along the lines of, racism isn't a black issue for white people to sympathize over. It is a white issue that we need to learn to fix. And I kind of agree with that quote. Again, I don't remember where I heard that, so if you know where that is from, let me know so I can leave in the comments and let people find it. I just can't remember where I heard that from. But anyways, so that was my racism and Black Lives Matter video. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Hey, if you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to see more, hit subscribe. If you have an opinion, leave it in the comments. About that, real quick before I end this video, I feel kind of sleazy doing the whole subscribe, like, and comment, song and dance thing. I feel like if you're watching this, you know how YouTube works. And so, like, if you like the video, you know where the like button is. If you want to see more from me, you know where the subscribe button is. So I almost feel weird just saying, like, comment, and subscribe. So here's the deal. While this channel is growing, I'm going to keep saying that at the end of every video. But once I hit 50 followers, if I ever hit 50 followers, I'm going to just stop saying that because, honestly, you guys know how YouTube works. I don't need to tell you where all the buttons are, and I don't need to tell you what to do. So I just wanted to say that real quick. Like, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, catch you in the next video. Peace out.